Thanks so much for your practice. It's becoming very clear to me the power of Zazen for everything. Of course, there's no separation. So your Zazen, your focus, your aspiration affects everything, and in a good way. It's a good thing to do. So thank you for that. I'm going to continue talking about Uji, Dogen's Uji, which Uji is time being. And I've done 2 or 3 talks on it and barely touched it. Hopefully you all have heard some of the talks because I want to move on. But basically, Uji means the time being. And then later on, he says, for the time being, in the first paragraph. The ancient Buddha said, for the time being, stand on the top of the highest peak. For the time being, proceed along the bottom of the deepest ocean. For the time being, 3 heads and 8 arms. For the time being, an 8 or 16-foot body, and on for 4 more lines. And I went over those lines in detail, but the easy way to say it is everything is in this moment. This very moment includes everything. And then he goes on in the second, well, this is still the first part. He goes on to say, for the time being here means time itself is being, and all being is time. To give you a sense of the flow of being is just like the flow of time. And how fast is time? It doesn't even make sense to ask that, because time is just being. So there is no fixed place. Constantly changing, and it's not even changing like, oh, it's here and then it's here. It's just time, just moving, constantly moving. And we suffer when we grasp, when we want to hold on to it. A 16-foot body is time. Because it is time, there is the radiant illumination of time. Okay, I'm going to go back and read a couple more. I've been using Shinshu Roberts' book, which is just a wonderful commentary, I think, on this. So she says, Dogen's primary purpose for writing Uji was to offer a clear approach to understanding and actualizing reality, resulting in awakening. So basically, all of Dogen's writings are not like a game, like a head game. It's instruction manual. So it's not like here's how life works. It's more like How to Build a House by Dogen Zenji, How to Build a Life by Dogen Zenji, How to Appreciate Your Life, how to realize an instruction manual in realization. And somewhere she says here, maybe I didn't write it down. She says that Dogen uses rational intellectualizing and poetry in this instruction manual, which is really interesting to me because that's like the right and left side of the brain. The right side likes rational explanations, and this is how things work. So in terms of the instruction manual, if it's electricity, it's when you connect this wire to this wire, the light will go on. And this is exactly how to do it. And then the poetry, the feelings, the imagination, the beauty of that light, how it shines and how I feel when it shines. He's combining both of those to create this instruction manual. And she also says in Uji, Dogen writes that if we do not ask the right questions about the nature of our experience, we cannot actualize realization. He poses and answers questions that he would like us to ask. These questions help us clarify our muddled thoughts, encouraging us to leap beyond the intellect to enact the Buddha way in our daily life. And this comes later in this reading where he talks about doubt. The second section, which is after this one, he talks about the importance of doubt. And that doubt involves questioning. Many people say Dogen didn't like koans. Dogen was all about shikantaza, which usually we say shikantaza is faith. People who just sit with the faith that I'll wake up. But you can see from his writings that he does talk about questioning, which is, they say, is the Rinzai practice. So koans are like, what is that? So working on a koan, and of course intellectual is part of it. Of course we say, well, why did they say be dead? Why would that be a good thing to be dead? Why did they use those terminologies? And you can answer it intellectually, and the more you read about Buddhism, the easier it is to come up with the intellectual answer. No self is being dead. But do you know what that is? You know what that dead is? You know what no self is? Not from that's the deconstruction of the ego or whatever, but what's that experience? So the questioning is, like I said, non-intellectual or rational. It's it's got the rational component, but it's got the emotional component too. What is it? It's driving me crazy. What is it? The dark night of the soul, the banging your head against the wall. What is it? And so Dogen says, not Dogen, Shinshu says, raise the here are questions. Dogen is presenting the questions that he would like us to practice with, because some of the questioning may not be very fruitful. If we're like if it's a game of who can say the best thing, who can say the smartest thing, who can talk in the most non-dualistic way. If it becomes an intellectual game, then that's not a very fruitful questioning. The fruitful question is when it really gets us. And I guess you could say emotionally, when it really gets us. What is it? And we're obsessed by it. My mom gave me a book, and it was like my first grown-up book. It was called The Magnificent Obsession. Maybe Seijo remembers that book. It's a Christian book, and the obsession was with Christ. But it's also a story about an alcoholic. It was a grown-up book. It was someone who was an alcoholic, or I don't know, their life wasn't working, their relationships working. And the obsession was with Christ or with awakening. So anyway, ultimately, as practitioners, we must move beyond an intellectual deconstruction of Dogen and enter the realm of practice. We take up Dogen's teachings in our everyday life as koan and ask, how does this apply to my life? So koan, there's the written koans that we work on, many of you are working on, but there's the life koan. Our relationships, the difficulty with relationships, plants, my beautiful bougainvillea, just the sweetest little orange bougainvillea, and it was covered in flowers. It was about this big, and it's gone. It's gone. I suspect bunnies is who I suspect, but it just disappeared. Where is the fairness of that? I love that little plant. I took care of it. I watered it. I talked to it. And some bunny, and they're not good to eat. They're covered in spines. Who took my plant? Anyway, that's a life koan about impermanence and about not knowing. All of the lessons are in my little bougainvillea. So, life koan. Also, he says, Dogen admonishes us to listen to our teacher's words without matching them with your previous views. That's in Guidelines to Study the Way. So our teachers, our mentors, our books, like again, intellectually, we want to put it all together and have it all make sense. So these words of Dogen, we want to put it in a big system. And once we've got that system down, once we understand all the little nuances of that system, then everything will be okay. Everything will work then. So forget that trying to have a system or trying to match the Dharma words right now with anything from before. Just take this moment, because this moment includes everything, which is Uji. Dogen's vision is the enactment of the shared salvific, means salvation. That's a word I never have used. The shared salvation endeavor. We're not the only ones engaged in the Bodhisattva way. I'm not in charge of saving the world, The whole universe has vowed to save all beings. It should be our aim to incorporate this truth and manifest the Bodhisattva way as our life. The premise of my understanding of Uji is that Dogen's intention is to provide us with a foundational understanding of a relational reality, thereby enabling us to go beyond words and enact each moment infused with the Bodhisattva vow of benefiting all beings. Although the views the ordinary unenlightened person now holds and the conditions that cause them are what the unenlightened person sees, it is not the unenlightened person's dharma. It is only the dharma temporarily causing them to see this way. So however we're seeing is the dharma, is perfect, because that's how the universe is manifesting right now in me. It's crazy to think about this. Anyway, crazy fun. So for the time being means time itself is being, and all being is time. A golden 16-foot body is time. Because it is time, there is radiant illumination of time. Study it as the 12 hours of the present. 3 heads and 8 arms is time. Because it is time, it is not separate from the 12 hours of the present. And I said before, I guess they talked about time in terms of 12 hours then, rather than 24. So this radiant illumination, the golden 16-foot body is Buddha, the incredible Buddha, the huge glowing Buddha. I've seen that during Zazen. I've seen that Buddha. You probably have too. And I thought that was a makio, a hallucination, but now I don't. I think that was a 16-foot golden Buddha that just showed up right then. And this radiation, which is something I think we have a feeling for. There's a radiance to awakening, to after doing session, when you go home and you look at your glowing face. Who then was even aware of the radiant light of the self? Even though people had been carrying the radiant light within their heads and encountering it all the time, they still did not practice as their own eyeballs. Thus, they did not clarify the shape and function of radiant light. Because they avoided encountering the radiant light, their radiant light was missing radiant light. Although missing is itself radiant light, they were immersed in missing. That's from the Fastful called Radiant Brightness, Komyo. That would be a good Dharma name, Komyo. It's radiant light, who is what we are. And it doesn't mean that radiant darkness is the opposite of radiant light. Darkness and light are all in this moment. So then 3 heads and 8 arms is time. 3 heads and 8 arms is a demon, some kind of Ashura demon. It's 3 heads and 8 arms. It's a scary guy. It's time. It's radiant light. It's right here. The 16-foot Buddha, the demonic Asura are here. And it is not separate from the 12 hours of the present. Even though, let me see if there's any more radiant light. The radiant light can be spoken of as the continuous effort and teaching of all things. Dogen writes in Vendoa that when we can enter into and express this golden radiance, we and all beings together expound the Dharma. Buddha nature, being time, must include all the different aspects of life, the Buddha, the Ashura. It cannot exclude the parts we don't like, the parts we call delusion. Now that's common, isn't it? I just want to get rid of my selfish thoughts, my pain, my anger, my ignorance. I just want to get rid of all of that. Dogen says, we can't. It's all here. It's all part of this moment. When we think about our life as Buddhist practitioners, and some of you may not think you're Buddhist, so I'll say spiritual practitioners, we want to think that spiritual life does not include mistakes, that it is these very mistakes that are the foundation of our wisdom. Where does our wisdom come from if not learning from our mistakes? So, each moment, each uji presents us with incredible, rich nutrition for our practice. And some of it is, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so one, it's, that experience, samadhi experience, being one with everything. But maybe even more vital is the mistakes and how we grow from our mistakes. And this is presented to us from our karma. It's the whole universe is, further on here, I have some quotes about, it's not I am practicing, it's the universe is practicing me. So, and it's easy enough to say intellectually, but when it really happens, that we make a big mistake, when we really hurt someone, when we really hurt ourselves, when we look like a fool, whatever. It's not so easy to say, oh, the universe is practicing me. But that's what's happening. And that's the kind of stuff that Zenju talks about how wonderful the darkness is. And of course, the darkness includes everything also. But we tend to think of the darkness as the chaos and how awful it is when we make mistakes or when we're hurt. Someone makes a mistake on us, the trauma, all of that we think of as the darkness. And Zenju teaches the richness of that darkness. And actually, she says, prejudice about dark-skinned people comes from this idea we're not supposed to go there. That's not a good place to go. I don't know if that's true, but certainly we're afraid of our mistakes. We're afraid to make a mistake. We're afraid to be seen as less than by our community or our friends. So opening up to, accepting, loving the darkness is a huge part of our practice, and it's what Dogen talks about. Open up to it all. And our delusion, Shinsho says, our wisdom is always present, even in the midst of our delusion. It is wisdom that stretches our mind and helps us to explore further, even in the middle of our discomfort and mistakes. So I'm sure you all experienced this. There's a difference from when things go wrong, just shutting down and go and hide in my room, which may be what we do for a while. But anyway, but it's the wisdom that goes, okay, what can I learn from this? Okay, what happened here? What's the message for me? What is the universe teaching me? Rather than, I hate life, I can't live because these bad things happen. The wisdom encourages us to open up to it. This is the first part. There's 19 parts. The second one, even though you do not measure the hours of the day as long or short, far or near, you still call it 12 hours. Because the signs of time's coming and going are obvious, people do not doubt it. Right? I mean, we don't say, oh, that was a long minute, that was a short minute. Maybe we do sometimes, but basically, life just moves. And we don't doubt it. We don't doubt the sun goes down, it's time to go to bed. We don't doubt, and that's, one way of seeing time. We don't doubt time. People do not doubt it. Although they do not doubt it, they do not understand it, right? I mean, who understands time? I said that before. The definition of time is what the clock in Greenwich says. We don't have a good definition of time. We don't doubt it and we don't understand it. Or when sentient beings doubt what they do not understand, their doubt is not firmly fixed. Because of that, their past doubts do not necessarily coincide with the present doubt. Yet doubt itself is nothing but time. So she says, to all intents and purposes, the study of Zen makes as its essential the resolution of the ball of great doubt. That is why it is said, at the bottom of great doubt lies great awakening. If you doubt fully, you will awaken fully. And it's one of the three pillars, right? Faith, doubt, determination. So the great doubt, why don't I see it? What is it? What is my life? Why don't I see it? If Buddhas and the ancestors and everybody has seen this, why don't I see it? Why does life seem so difficult? Why can't I break through and realize the oneness of all things and fully appreciate that life? Why can't I? That's the great doubt. Truly productive doubt must bring us to a point in which we drop our intellect and enter the realm of actualization. So again, Dogen is giving us something to use as the questioning. And as long as the questioning happens on the intellectual plane, that's enlightenment, that's Uji, that's perfect. But she says it's very difficult to realize ourselves when we're just on the intellectual plane, when we just, why is it that the sun rises and the sun sets? And why is it that Dogen says that time is this or whatever? And then when the sun rises because of the way the planets are, and when we get into thinking like that, it doesn't have the depth of that great doubt, which is in our gut, It makes me think of the commentary on Mu. What is Mu? What is true self? That's the great doubting koan. What is it? What is it? And the commentary says it's like you swallowed a hot iron ball and it's stuck in your throat and you can't spit it out and you can't swallow it. That's the kind of intensity that that great doubt brings. What is it? Oh, here's the thing about logic and poetry. Uji is Dogen's attempt to present the teachings through a certain kind of logic. Dogen combines intellectual understanding with a poetic sensibility in order to invite us to enter a new paradigm of practice. So just staying in the intellectual is not what he's promoting. It's using words and poetry to give rise to that great doubt. And from there to the realization of true self. Maybe I'll just read the next part. It's great. The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. Things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. The way-seeking mind arises in this moment. A way-seeking moment arises in this mind. It is the same with practice and with attaining the way. Thus, the self, setting itself out in array, sees itself. This is the understanding that the self is time. And arraying, it's the self arrays itself and embodies the whole world. Setting time in array is to fully occupy the fluctuating impermanence of the present moment as embodied in one person. Since being time includes the individual's unique being time and simultaneously the arising of all beings' times, this becomes the totality of all being at that moment practicing together. To set the self out in array includes both the universal and the individual. We make each moment, and each moment makes us. It is a reciprocal and unobstructed event. So the self arrays itself. The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. Maybe the way the self exists is the form of the entire world. So we array ourselves with every single thing in the whole universe. I'll just read it once more. This is really beautiful, I think. Very evocative. The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. Things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. The way-seeking mind arises in this moment. A way-seeking moment arises in this mind. It is the same with practice and with attaining the way. Thus, the self, setting itself out in array, sees itself. This is the understanding that the self is time. Okay, perfect. So just encouraging all of us to keep on going and open up to whatever your experience is right now. And look at that opening up, look at how we shut down. But just continue to get bigger and bigger, because that's what each of you are, is the whole universe. So why limit yourself? Why obstruct yourself? Open up to that fact.